The Wasp Factory. Chapter 5, A Bunch of Flowers, Part 4. Look at you, my father said when I eventually came down in my dressing gown to watch an old movie on the television that afternoon. I hope you're proud of yourself. I hope you think feeling like that makes you a man. My father tutted and shook his head, then went back to reading his Scientific American. I sat down carefully in one of the lounge's big easy chairs. I did get a bit drunk last night, Dad. I admit it. I'm sorry if it upsets you, but I assure you I'm suffering for it. Well, I hope that teaches you a lesson. Do you realize how many brain cells you probably managed to kill off last night? A good few thousand, I said after a brief pause for calculation. My father nodded enthusiastically. At least. Well, I try not to do it again. Ha! Brap, said my anus loudly, surprising me as well as my father. He put the magazine down and stared into space over my head, smiling wisely as I cleared my throat and flapped the hem of my dressing gown as unobtrusively as I could. I could see his nostrils flex and quiver. Lager and whiskey, eh? He said, nodding to himself and taking up his magazine again. I felt myself blush and I gritted my teeth, glad he had retreated behind the glossy pages. How did he do that? I pretended nothing had happened. Oh, by the way, I said, I hope you don't mind, but I told Jamie that Eric had escaped. My father glared over the magazine, shook his head, and continued reading. Idiot, he said. In the evening, after a snack rather than a meal, I went up to the loft and used the telescope to take a distant look at the island, making sure that nothing had happened to it while I rested inside the house. Everything appeared calm. I did go for a short walk in the cool overcast, just along the beach to the south end of the island and back. Then I stayed in and watched some more television when the rain came on, carried on a low wind. When the rain came on, carried on a low wind, glummer-mudding against the window. I'd gone to bed when the phone rang. I got up quickly as I hadn't really started to drop off when it went. I ran down to get it before my father. I didn't know if he was still up or not. Yes, I said breathlessly, tucking my pajama jacket into the bottoms. Pip sounded. Then a voice on the other end sighed. No. What? I said, frowning. No, the voice on the other end said. Eh? I said. I wasn't even sure it was Eric. You said yes. I say no. What do you want me to say? Port Neal 531. Okay, Port Neal 531, hello. Okay, goodbye. The voice giggled. Then the phone went dead. I looked at it accusingly, then put it down in the cradle. I hesitated. The phone rang again. I snatched it up halfway through the first tinkle. Yee, I started. Then the pip sounded. I waited until they stopped and said, Port Neal 531. Port Neal 531, said Eric. I thought it was Eric, at least. Yes, I said. Yes, what? Yes, this is Port Neal 531. But I thought this was Port Neal 531. This is. Who is that? Is that you? It's me. Is that Port Neal 531? Yes, I shouted. And who's that? Frank Caldheim, I said, trying to be calm. Who's that? Frank Caldheim, Eric said. I looked around up and down the stairs, but saw no sign of my father. Hello, Eric, I said, smiling. I decided that whatever else happened tonight, I would not make him angry. I'd put the phone down rather than say the wrong thing and have my brother wreck yet another piece of the post office property. I just told you my name's Frank. Why are you calling me Eric? Come on, Eric. I recognize your voice. I'm Frank. Stop calling me Eric. Okay. I'll call you Frank. So who are you? I thought for a moment. Eric? I said tentatively. You just said you were called Frank. I sighed, leaning against the wall with one hand and wondering what I could say that was that was just a that was just a joke. Oh God, I don't know. I frowned at the phone and waited for Eric to say something. Anyway, Eric said, Eric said, what's the latest news? Oh, nothing much. I was out last night at the pub. Did you call last night? Me? No. Oh, Dad said somebody did. I thought it might have been you. Why would I call? Well, I don't know. I shrugged to myself. For the same reason you called tonight. Whatever. Well, why do you think I called tonight? I don't know. You don't know why. You don't know why I've called? You aren't sure of your own name? You get mine wrong? You're not up to much, are you? Oh dear, I said, more to myself than to Eric. I could feel this conversation going all the wrong way. Aren't you going to ask me how I am? Yes, I said. How are you? Terrible. How are you? Okay, why are you feeling terrible? You don't really care. Of course I care. What's wrong? Nothing. Oh, nothing that would interest you. Ask me something else, like, how's the weather, or where am I, or something. I know you don't care how I feel. Of course I do. You're my brother. Naturally I care. I protested. Just at that moment, I heard the kitchen door open, and seconds later, my father appeared at the bottom of the stairs, and taking hold of the great wooden bowl sculpted on the top of the last banister, stood glaring up at me. He lifted his head and put it slightly to one side and listened better. I missed a little of what Eric said in reply to me and only caught, care how I feel. Every time I ring up, it's the same. Where are you? That's all you care about. You don't care about where my head's at, only my body. I don't know why I bother. I don't. I might as well not take the trouble of calling. Well, there you are, I said, looking down at my father, smiling. He stood there silent and unmoving. See what I mean? That's all you can say. Well, there you are. Thanks a fucking lot. That shows all you care. Not at all. Quite the contrary, I told him, then put the phone just a little away from my mouth and shouted to my father, it's only Jamie again, Dad. Why I bother to make the effort, really. I don't. Eric rambled on in the earpiece, apparently oblivious to what I just said. My father ignored it, too, standing in the same position as before, head cocked. I licked my lips and said, well, Jamie? What? You see? You've forgotten my name again. Now, what's the use? That's what I'd like to know. What's the use? He doesn't love me. You love me, though, don't you? His voice became slightly fainter and more echoey. He must have taken his mouth away from the handset. It sounded as though he was talking to someone else in the call box with him. Yes, Jamie, of course. I smiled at my father and nodded and put one hand under the other armpit, trying to look as relaxed as possible. You love me, don't you, my sweet? As though your little heart was on fire for me, Eric mumbled far away. I swallowed and smiled again at my father. Well, that's the way things go, Jamie. I was just saying that to my dad here this morning. I waved at father. You're burning up with love for me, aren't you, me little darlin'? My heart and stomach seemed to collide as I heard a rapid panting noise come over the phone behind Eric's muttering. A slight whine and some slobbery noises brought goose pimples all over me. I shivered. My head shook as though I'd just knocked back some 100 proof whiskey. Pant, pant, whine, whine went the noise. Eric said something soothing and quiet in the background. Oh my God, he had a dog in there with him. Oh no. Well, listen, Jamie, what do you think? I said loudly and desperately, wondering if my father would see my goosebumps. I thought my eyes must be staring out of my head, too, but there was little I could do. I was trying the best I could to think of something distracting to say to Eric. I was just thinking of what we really must get Willie to give us another shot of his old car. You know, the mini he bombs up and down and sands on down the sands on sometimes. I'm struggling. That was really good fun earlier on, wasn't it? I was croaking by now, my mouth drying up.